Count was humiliated by all the ladies for being obese, but one saw something beyond his appearance. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. Snow still clung to the edges of the street when the Dame Blanc carriage stopped before the Hôtel Particulier on the Rue de la Paix. Lanterns burned along the façade, casting a golden glow over the line of waiting vehicles. The sound of music drifted down the steps. Violins, a piano, the distant murmur of a waltz. Laughter spilled out each time the great doors opened. Inside the carriage, Henri Damblin stared at his gloved hands. "They will be very glad to see you, mon cousin," Marcel said beside him. "You have been absent from too many gatherings. People will talk if you hide forever." "They talk when I do not appear, and they talk when I do," Henri replied. His voice was low, patient, as though stating a fact that no longer surprised him. "I am not certain it makes any difference." Marcel laughed softly, trying to sound light. "Tonight is the winter ball. Even the most critical tongues will be occupied with other matters. New gowns, new scandals, new hopeful matches. No one will have time to count how many steps you take." Henri's eyes flicked up. "They will have time to count how many steps I tread upon some poor lady's feet." "Henri," Marcel said, more serious now, "you are a Count of France. You are respected in business. You are generous to your tenants. There will be a young lady with enough sense to value that." Henri glanced at the window. The frost on the glass blurred the lights outside into soft halos. "One might exist," he murmured, "somewhere in another city or another century." The door opened with a rush of cold air and sound. A footman bowed. "Monsieur le Comte." Henri drew in a breath, gathered his courage like an ill-fitting coat around him, and stepped down. The steps were crowded with guests arriving, cloaks and silks, jewels and polished boots. Henri felt the familiar tug of his waistcoat over his stomach, felt the strain where the tailor had let out the seams as far as they would go. He adjusted his cravat with careful fingers and climbed the stairs, Marcel at his side. "Remember," Marcel said quietly, leaning toward him, "you must ask. They will not come to you, but you do not need them all. Only one kind heart." Henri managed a nod. Inside, the ballroom glittered. Crystal chandeliers spread light over the polished floor, over pale satin gowns, dark coats, the gleam of bracelets and hair ornaments. The smell of wax and faint perfume mingled with the subtle warmth of many bodies in one room. A waltz flowed from the orchestra at the far end. Conversations rose and fell in waves. Names floated through the air, titles, bits of gossip like little feathers drifting. A new engagement, a lost fortune, a scandalous visit to a country estate. Henri felt as if he had stepped into a bright sea in which he had never learned to swim. Marcel clapped him lightly on the shoulder. "I must greet Madame de Rochefort," he said. "Her son will make my life miserable if I fail to praise his latest horse. But I will return. Go, Henri. Choose a lady. Start with someone you know." Henri watched his cousin's back disappear into the crowd. For a moment he stood alone, the music surging around him. He could leave. He could turn and walk back down the stairs, back to the quiet of his library, his books, his chessboard where pieces never laughed. No one would drag him to the dance floor. Then he thought of his mother, now 2 years gone, who had often said in her gentle way, "Do not surrender to the judgment of those who know nothing of your heart, my son. You are more than the mirror will ever show you." He straightened his shoulders. He scanned the room. A group of young ladies stood near the far wall, their gowns pale against the dark wood paneling, their fans fluttering like restless birds. He recognized 2 of them, Mademoiselle de Villiers and Mademoiselle Obese, daughters of a family that owned land not far from his own. He had exchanged polite phrases with their father at the hunting season. It was as good a place to begin as any. Henri crossed the floor, moving carefully between clusters of guests. He nodded to a gentleman here, murmured a greeting there. He felt eyes glance his way and leap away again. The music swelled as he approached the group of ladies. "Mesdemoiselles," he said, bowing. "Good evening." They turned, their faces bright, polite. Their eyes flickered to his face, then his broad chest, then down to the floor. Mademoiselle de Villiers dipped a little curtsy. "Good evening, Monsieur le Comte," she said. "What a surprise to see you. It has been too long." "It has indeed," Henri replied. "I have been detained in the country. Your father is well, I hope. Very well. He speaks often of the improvements you have made on your estate. I am pleased to hear it. Henri wet his lips. His heart hammered against his ribs. Mademoiselle, if your dance card is not entirely filled, would you do me the honor of the next waltz? There was a tiny pause. Mademoiselle de Villiers glanced quickly at her friend. Mademoiselle Aubert's fan snapped open with a rustle. Oh, I am so sorry, Monsieur le Comte, Mademoiselle de Villiers said. Truly I am. The next waltz is promised, and the one after that, I fear. The evening is so crowded. Of course, Henri said at once. I should not have assumed. He attempted a smile. Another time, perhaps. She gave him a sympathetic look that did not reach her eyes. Perhaps. He stepped back, his ears burning. It was nothing. Ladies refused gentlemen every night. It was their right. He drew a breath and turned toward another group. Near the refreshment table stood two younger ladies he did not know well. They were laughing together, glancing toward the door as though expecting someone. Henri approached with careful steps. Mesdemoiselles, he began, bowing again, allow me to introduce myself. Henri d'Amblin. They dipped faint curtsies. Comte d'Amblin, one said. We have heard of you. I am Louise Duret, and this is my cousin Amélie. A pleasure, Mademoiselle Duret, Mademoiselle Amélie, Henri replied. May I hope to claim one of your dances this evening? Louise's eyes sparkled with amusement. Ah, monsieur, you are too late. My card is quite ruined with names already. Is it not, Amélie? Amélie glanced down at the little booklet hanging from her wrist. Entirely ruined, she echoed, though the pages were not full. I see, Henri murmured. Perhaps later in the evening, Louise said, her smile widening a fraction. If I somehow lose track of all my partners. Yes, of course. Henri gave another little bow, feeling that any further words would only prolong his humiliation. Enjoy the evening, mesdemoiselles. As he moved away, he heard a whisper behind him, quickly suppressed, followed by a small choked laugh. He did not turn. He told himself he did not care what was said. He made a third attempt, then a fourth. Each time, the refusal was polite but clear. A full card, a headache, a promise already given, a vow to sit out that particular dance. The excuses multiplied, each wrapped in a silk ribbon of courtesy, but the eyes betrayed something sharper, discomfort, disdain, a hint of amusement. Henri's throat felt dry. He accepted a glass of punch from a passing servant and held it without drinking, his hand steady only because long practice had taught him to hide the tremor. The music changed. Couples swept past in a whirl of color and movement. Laughter floated above the violins. Comte d'Amblin. He turned. A plump older lady smiled at him. Madame Lafargue, he said, bowing. You look well, monsieur, she said. Have you danced? Not yet, Henri answered. I have had the honor of speaking with several ladies, but their cards are quite full. Ah, Madame Lafargue said, her eyes soft with something that looked too much like pity. These young girls are foolish. Do not let them discourage you. I will not, he lied. Madame Lafargue patted his arm and drifted away. Near the center of the room, a cluster of young men stood together, laughing. Henri recognized Antoine Delacroix among them, straight and slim in a perfectly cut black coat, his dark hair shining under the chandeliers. Antoine's smile was quick, his manner easy. Ladies watched him as though he were another dance himself, one they all wished to try. Henri saw a servant pass close to Antoine's group, carrying a heavy silver tray filled with crystal glasses. A careless movement would have sent the whole tray tumbling. Henri shifted instinctively, ready to step in if needed. He did not have the chance. The servant brushed against a gentleman's sleeve, the tray wobbled. Henri reached out, steadying the tray with one hand, and the servant's elbow with the other. Careful, he said quietly. It is better to walk a little slower than to break all of Madame's crystal. The servant flushed, nodded, and murmured, Merci, Monsieur le Comte, before hurrying on. Henri stood for a moment, watching him go. Just another tiny act no one would notice, except someone had. From her place near the musicians' gallery, Elise Moreau watched the exchange. She had seen the servant nearly stumble. She had seen Henri move with surprising swiftness for a man of his size, his hand firm but gentle on the young man's arm, his voice kind rather than scolding. She had seen the way he stepped back afterward, as though trying to erase his presence. Elise's chaperone, her aunt, was speaking in her ear about a cousin's engagement. Elise nodded at appropriate intervals, her eyes still following Henri. "I assure you, my dear," her aunt was saying, "Antoine Delacroix is one of the most eligible gentlemen present. Handsome, well-connected, charming, and he danced with you twice at the last soirée. That must mean something." "He dances with many ladies," Elise replied, tearing her gaze away from Henri with effort. "His meaning may be nothing more than that he likes to dance." "Do not be contrary," her aunt scolded mildly. "A young lady must encourage the right attentions. It is no small thing for a family in our position." Elise smiled, but her attention slipped again. She watched Henri move through the crowd, saw the way people parted a little before him, as if unconsciously widening the path. He was large, yes, his figure heavy, his coat straining slightly across his middle. His features were strong rather than fine, his jaw thick, his cheeks round. But his eyes held an expression she had seen in wounded animals and tired children, a mixture of resignation and longing. Her aunt's voice faded into the background. Henri attempted once more to reach the group of ladies near the farthest wall. He paused as he neared them, rehearing the polite phrases in his head. "Mademoiselle, if you are not engaged for the next dance, would you allow me the honor? May I hope?" His hand tightened on his glass. He set it down on a passing tray before he dropped it. This time he approached only one lady. She stood a little apart from her companions, her gown a pale blue, her fan closed in her hand. She appeared less amused than the others, her face calm, almost thoughtful. Henri recognized her vaguely. He had seen her at the opera once. "Pardon, mademoiselle," he said, bowing. "Forgive the boldness of a stranger. I am Henri d'Amblin." She inclined her head. "I know of you, monsieur. My brother spoke once of your estate." "I am honored," he replied. "If you are not already engaged, might I ask for the next dance?" Her eyes flickered to his, then away. For a second, Henri dared to hope. Then one of her friends leaned close and whispered something that Elise could not hear from across the room. But she saw the effect, the slight tightening at the corners of the lady's mouth, the brief, almost embarrassed smile. "Oh, monsieur," the lady said, "I must beg your pardon. I have promised my mother to sit this dance. My feet are tired already, you see." "Of course," Henri said. "I would not dream of causing you discomfort." Her friend gave a little laugh. "Indeed, our poor feet must be guarded." The group around them tittered, not loudly, not rudely, not quite, but enough. Henri nodded, his face carefully neutral, and stepped back. As he turned away, the laughter grew a little louder, bolder, like children testing how far they might go before a parent scolded. He walked without seeing where he went. The room seemed suddenly too bright, the music too loud. He reached the edge of the dance floor and stopped, gripping the back of a chair to steady himself. His palm left a faint imprint of moisture on the polished wood. "It is enough," he thought. "I have made my attempt. I have proven my mother wrong. There is no such lady in this room." He took a step toward the nearest door. At that moment, Antoine Delacroix's voice carried clearly across a brief lull in conversation. He stood in the center of a circle of young men and a few older ladies, holding the attention of his audience with a practiced smile. "Ah, but my dear Marquis," Antoine was saying, "there are some gentlemen who labor under the belief that a title can make their figure charming. It is a touching illusion, is it not? Like dressing a draft horse in a race saddle and insisting he is ready for the derby." The little circle around him laughed. One of the ladies protested in a half-hearted murmur, "Monsieur Antoine, you are unkind." "Unkind?" Antoine lifted his hands. "Never. I am merely observing. There is elegance and there is solidity. One must know the difference." Henri did not need anyone to point. He felt the heat crawl up the back of his neck as surely as if someone had laid a hand there. His body seemed to expand, to fill the whole room, every awkward curve and seam suddenly exposed under the light. A gentleman near Antoine added, "Some believe that wealth and a few acres can persuade a lady to close her eyes to anything." More laughter. "Yes," another said, "to close her eyes perhaps, but not forever." Henri drew in a long, thin breath. He told himself he was imagining it, that they might not be speaking of him. Then he saw one of the young men glance in his direction, quickly then away, and the illusion evaporated. Marcel appeared at his side, his face dark with anger. "Henri," he said, low, "ignore them. They are fools. Delacroix is a peacock. He will die of boredom one day, staring at his own reflection." Henri's mouth twitched. "Do not trouble yourself." "I will trouble myself," Marcel hissed. "If he makes one more remark—" "No." Henri's hand shot out, closing over Marcel's wrist. "So you will do nothing. I will not be the center of a scene." "You already are," Marcel said bitterly. "But very well. What will you do then?" "I will leave," Henri answered. Marcel stared at him. "Already? Do you propose I remain so that Delacroix may have fresh material for every waltz?" Henri shook his head. "No, I have fulfilled my duty. I have attended. I have made the attempt. I am tired, Marcel. I am very tired." Marcel's expression softened. "If you insist, I will accompany you." "There is no need," Henri said. "You enjoy these gatherings. Stay, dance. Do not let my mood spoil your evening." "I will at least see you to the cloakroom," Marcel said stubbornly. Henri opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. He was too tired to fight over such a small kindness. "Very well," he said quietly. They began to make their way along the edge of the room. As they passed one group, a lady's voice floated to them, high and clear. "No, no, I do not care if he is a count," she said. "I shall not dance with a man who will crush my gown and leave me breathless from being constantly dragged about. I may survive one waltz, but my poor silk will not." Another voice asked, "Whom do you mean?" "Why, whom else?" she replied, too loudly. "Our enormous Comte d'Amblin, of course. If he plants one foot on my hem, I shall vanish entirely under him." There was a burst of laughter. Henri stopped as if struck. Marcel swore under his breath. Henri felt the room tilt. For a heartbeat, he feared he might fall forward, that the floor would rush up to meet him. He imagined what they said was true. He would crush a lady like fragile glass. He would ruin her gown, her evening, her pride. He saw himself as they saw him, clumsy, grotesque, absurd. Then the moment passed. The floor steadied. He straightened his back. "Go on, Marcel," he said. "Return to your horses and talk of their beauty. I know the way to the door." "I will not leave you alone like this," Marcel protested. "I am not a child," Henri replied, "nor am I ill. I am simply finished. Go. Please." Their eyes met. Marcel saw then that argument would be worse than abandonment. "Very well," he said softly. "Send me a note tomorrow so that I know you reached home in one piece." "I shall," Henri promised. Marcel hesitated, then turned away with a frustrated gesture. Henri stood at the very edge of the ballroom, just beyond the shadow of a tall potted palm. The music shifted to a new melody, lively and bright. Couples formed, laughter buzzed, conversation resumed. His humiliation dissolved into the general noise, like a stone dropped into a restless river. He looked at the great doors across the room. Between him and them stretched the polished dance floor, the clusters of guests, the glint of chandeliers. It seemed an enormous distance, but if he crossed it, if he stepped out into the cold, then in an hour he would be home. In his own house, the only eyes upon him would be those of the servants, who had seen him at his worst and best, and long ago ceased to be surprised. He exhaled slowly and took a step. As he moved, he saw a footman hurrying past a group of ladies, his tray piled high with glasses again. The man's hand trembled slightly. Henri reached out automatically, steadying the tray for a heartbeat, then letting go before anyone noticed. "Thank you, monsieur," the servant whispered, startled. "It is nothing," Henri said. He continued toward the door. From the musicians' gallery, Elise watched him. She had seen the laughter, the way certain ladies leaned close to whisper, the way the young men's smiles sharpened when Henri passed. She did not know every word spoken, but the tone was unmistakable. She felt a tight, hot knot form in her chest, a mixture of anger and shame on his behalf. Her aunt followed her gaze. "Do not stare at him, dear," she said quietly. "It is unkind to draw attention." "I am not the one drawing attention," Elise replied. "Others have done that already." Her aunt sighed. "There is always someone whom society chooses as its victim for the season. It is unfortunate. But you must not involve yourself. People will talk. People talk regardless," Elise said. "It seems to be their favorite pastime." She watched Henri pause near the palm, watched Marcel speak to him and then leave. She saw the way Henri's shoulders dropped just a little after his cousin walked away. She saw him look at the door, the way a prisoner might look at an open gate, uncertain whether to believe in his own freedom. The orchestra began a fresh waltz. The floor filled again. Her aunt rose. "Come, Elise. You must return to the center of the room. Some gentleman will surely wish to claim you for this dance." Elise did not move. "Elise," her aunt asked. "A moment, aunt," Elise said. "There is something I must do." Before her aunt could protest, Elise stepped away from the chairs by the musicians and started down the small staircase to the ballroom. The world below became clearer with each step, the glimmer of jewels, the murmur of conversations, the faint scent of perfume. She reached the floor and moved through the crowd, her pace steady. People turned as she passed. Some smiled, some nodded. A few gentlemen began to move toward her, eager to ask for the next dance. She did not stop for any of them. Henri had taken another step toward the door. He was almost there. Just a few more strides and he would be gone, carrying his humiliation home like an unwelcome companion. He heard the rustle of silk behind him, light footsteps coming closer. He assumed it was some lady hurrying to a partner, someone whose life would never intersect with his in any meaningful way. Then a clear, calm voice spoke his name. "Comte d'Amblin." He turned. Elise Moreau stood before him, her gown a soft ivory that caught the light. Her hair gathered in a simple but elegant arrangement. Her face was not the kind that disappeared into a crowd. It was the kind the painters begged to capture. Yet her eyes, the color of clear grey morning, held no trace of mockery, only a quiet firmness. Henri bowed at once. "Mademoiselle Moreau," he said, startled. "Good evening." Around them, conversations faltered. People glanced over, drawn as always by Elise's presence, then surprised to see whom she had approached. Elise's voice carried just enough to be heard by those nearest them. "Comte d'Amblin," she said, extending her gloved hand toward him, "would you grant me the honor of this dance?" For a heartbeat, Henri thought he had misheard her. The noise of the ballroom faded, then rushed back. Her hand was there, very real, very small, suspended between them. People were watching. He could feel their eyes like heat on the back of his neck. "Mademoiselle," he managed, "you do me too much honor." "Not at all," Elise said. "You were on the verge of leaving. I feared Paris would lose the chance to see how well you dance." A faint smile touched her lips. It was not mocking. It was invitation. Henri stared at her offered hand. His own hand moved almost of its own will, closing gently around hers. He felt the delicate bones through the glove, felt how easily he could crush them if he was not careful. He bowed more deeply than he had all evening. "If you are quite certain, mademoiselle," he said, "then I would be delighted." "I am quite certain," she replied, "unless you wish to refuse me." The corner of his mouth twitched. "I would be the greatest fool in Paris." A murmur swept nearby. Fans rustled like nervous birds. One of the young men who had been walking toward Elise stopped short, watching with his mouth half open. Henri led her to the dance floor. The crowd shifted, parting around them. The orchestra, sensing the moment, swelled into the waltz with extra vigor. As they took their places among the couples, Henri leaned closer and said under his breath, "I feel I must warn you that my reputation as a dancer is no better than my reputation as a wit." "Then we shall improve both tonight," Elise replied. "Begin with the first and see what follows." The music carried them. Henri placed his right hand carefully at her waist, his left hand holding hers. He felt ungainly, as he always did, afraid of misjudging distance, of bumping another couple, of stepping where he should not. His heart pounded so loudly he was certain she must hear it. They began to move. The first few steps were slightly stiff. He counted silently, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, focusing on nothing but the pattern. "Breathe, Comte," Elise said softly. "I am attempting to. You are attempting too hard." He dared a glance down. Her face was tilted slightly toward his, her expression composed, her eyes calm. There was no sign of fear that he would crush her gown, no nervous glance at his feet. "You are very kind to risk your slippers," he said. "I once stepped twice on my own hem and fell in front of my entire family," she replied. "After that, all other accidents seemed trivial." "You fell?" he echoed, startled. "Oh, yes. My aunt shrieked as though I had been shot. My brother laughed until he cried." It was quite the event. Henri's lips parted. A short, surprised laugh escaped him. There, Elise said. You see, you can breathe and laugh at the same time. He exhaled, and the tightness in his chest loosened a little. The room stopped tilting. The steps became smoother. His hand on her waist found a natural position, neither gripping nor hovering. They turned with the others, the chandeliers spinning slowly above them. Near the wall, a woman murmured, "Look at her. Dancing with him. Has she lost her senses?" Another answered, "Perhaps she lost them to his title." A third said, "Or perhaps she likes a challenge." Their whispers reached Henri's ears like faint buzzing. He tried to shut them out. "Tell me, mademoiselle," he said, clinging to conversation. "Do you enjoy balls?" "I enjoy music and movement," she said. "I enjoy seeing my friends happy. I do not enjoy being measured like a piece of porcelain." "You are hardly porcelain," Henri said before he could stop himself. "You are far too alive." She looked up at him, genuinely surprised. A small color rose in her cheeks. "That may be the most honest compliment I have received this season," she said. "Usually I am told I am delicate, fragile, angelic, or some other word that suggests I might vanish if I dare to think." He winced. "I shall avoid angels and fragility then." "Please do. The angels may be offended." Another laugh slipped from him. She watched his face soften. "You see," she said, "your wit fares very well when you stop worrying about it." "I worry about everything," he admitted. "It has become something of a habit." "Then tonight you must break one habit," she said. "At least for the length of a waltz." He looked down into her eyes, saw nothing there but sincerity and a little mischief. Very slowly, as the music flowed around them, he allowed himself to imagine that this one dance might be simply what it appeared to be, a gentleman and a lady moving together for the pleasure of it. They glided through a turn. Another couple came close. Henri shifted his weight to avoid colliding with them. He succeeded, his steps surprisingly nimble for a man of his size. "You are doing it," Elise said, quiet enough that only he could hear. "You dance very well, Comte. I suspect your standards for acceptable dancing are merciful." "I have danced with men who treated the waltz as a military march," she replied. "You are not among them. You are listening to the music. That is half the battle." "And the other half?" he asked. "Listening to your partner," she said. "Then I am doubly grateful," he answered. "Because you are the one partner in this room I am most eager to hear." Her lashes fluttered once, a tiny sign that his words had reached her. Around them the stares continued. Some were openly incredulous, others amused, a few thoughtful. The murmurs grew, died, then grew again. But they did not slow the dance. At the far side of the room, Antoine Delacroix watched with narrowed eyes. He lounged against a pillar, a glass of wine in hand, his posture casual. His gaze, however, was sharp. He saw the way Elise's face relaxed when she looked up at Henri. He saw the way Henri's shoulders dropped, how his stride grew more confident as the dance continued. Beside Antoine, a young man in a green waistcoat snorted. "Look at that," he said. "Our gentle giant found a beauty to pity him." Antoine smiled faintly. "Mademoiselle Moreau is famous for her gentle heart. It is only natural that she would extend her kindness." "Kindness?" another replied. "She will ruin her reputation if she is not careful. People will say she favors unusual types." Antoine took a sip of wine. "People will say many things," he said lightly. "They always do." "But she is your particular favorite, is she not?" the man in green asked. "You have been seen at her side often enough." Antoine's smile sharpened. "Favorites can change," he said. "But yes, I am interested. A sensible man would be." His friends laughed. "He will eat her alive," one whispered. "Not if she comes to her senses," another said. "This is just a dance after all." Antoine kept his gaze on the couple. "Just a dance," he repeated softly. On the dance floor, the waltz drew to an end. The music slowed, then stopped. Couples bowed and curtsied. Hands parted. The applause was polite. Henri released Elise's hand reluctantly. He bowed. "Mademoiselle," he said, "you have my deepest thanks. You have rescued my evening from many things." "You rescued mine from boredom," she replied. "So we are even." He could not help it. He smiled. Several people nearby were close enough to hear. One lady's mouth tightened, another raised her brows. Henri noticed. The old instinct rose in him, step back, disappear, flee, before someone said something cutting. He began to straighten, intending to offer a formal farewell. But Elise did not let him retreat. She spoke clearly, giving the impression of casual conversation, but with words chosen like precise strokes of a brush. "Tell me, Comte," she said, "do you often deprive the ladies of Paris of such agreeable company? It seems a selfish habit." He blinked. "I was not under the impression that my company was much missed." "Then Paris is more foolish than I imagined," she said. She turned slightly so that the small circle around them, forming like mist, could see her face. "I have rarely found a partner so attentive to both conversation and the music." There was a little silence. A gentleman coughed. Louise Duret, who had refused Henri earlier, stood within earshot. She fluttered her fan. "Why, Elise, you always know how to say the kindest things," she remarked. "I suppose some ladies appreciate unusual partners." Elise tilted her head. "I cannot speak for others, Louise, only for myself." "And what do you value?" Louise asked, her tone sweet and sharp at once. "Patience," Elise said without hesitation. "Good manners, a capacity to listen, the ability to prevent a careless servant from dropping a tray, for example. Those qualities make a dance much more pleasant than the shape of a coat." Several faces shifted, some lowering their eyes. A few had seen the incident with the tray. Henri felt heat rise to his face again, but it was a different kind of warmth. Louise bit her lip. "Well, of course, courtesy is important," she said. "But ladies also wish to feel proud when they are seen on the floor." "Yes," Elise said calmly, "proud to be seen beside a gentleman whose character does him credit." She looked directly at Henri as she spoke. The unspoken rebuke hung in the air. It was gentle, wrapped in gracious words, but it was there. A couple of gentlemen shifted their weight, suddenly eager to admire a painting or a ceiling rather than meet anyone's eyes. Henri swallowed. He had never heard anyone speak so plainly in his defense, not even Marcel. He did not know what to do with the sudden, unfamiliar sensation in his chest. It felt like someone had opened a window in a room he had long kept closed. Louise laughed, though the sound was overbright. "You have always had a talent for such phrases, Elise. No wonder half the men in Paris sigh when you pass." "Half of them sigh at their reflections," Elise said lightly. "The other half sigh because they have lost money at cards." A few people laughed. The tension eased slightly. Henri found his voice. "Mademoiselle Moreau," he said, "you are too generous. I suspect you make virtues where none exist." "I do not invent what is already there," she answered. "I simply point it out." He looked at her for a moment, almost at a loss. Then he inclined his head. "If I may," he said, "may I bring you a glass of punch?" "Only if you promise not to vanish on the way," she replied. "I give you my word," he said. He moved toward the refreshment table. The murmurs began again as soon as his back was turned. Elise could feel them like drafts around her shoulders. Her aunt hurried up at once, her face pale with mild alarm. "Elise," she whispered, "what are you doing? Dancing with him, speaking so openly. People will say you are charitable." "Is charity now a crime?" Elise asked. "In excess, yes," her aunt said. "You must be careful. Antoine Delacroix has been showing you great attention. If he believes you prefer such unusual company—" "If he believes that," Elise said, "he may ask me and I will give him an honest answer." "Oh, child," her aunt said in a despairing tone, "you cannot say everything you think." "I do not," Elise replied. "If I did, this room would be much quieter." Her aunt pressed her lips together. "At least do not encourage the Count's hopes. It would be cruel to make him think—" "I have not decided what I wish," Elise said, keeping her voice low. "I know only that I will not mock a man for what he cannot change. That to me would be cruel." Her aunt sighed, half defeated. "You will be the ruin of my nerves." Henri returned with 2 glasses. His hand had steadied. Not a drop spilled. "Punch, mademoiselle," he said. "Thank you," she replied. "You see, you followed directions perfectly. You did not vanish at all." "Tempting as it was," he said. "Do you truly find escape from every gathering so tempting?" she asked. "Almost everyone," he admitted. "Tonight especially." "Then I am glad I arrived in time," she said. He looked at her more closely. "You observed more than I thought." he said slowly. I observed enough, she replied. I have very little patience for jokes that rely on making someone else feel small. You are an unusual lady, mademoiselle, he said. Again with the word unusual, she murmured. I believe people mean many different things with it. In your case, he said, I mean it as the highest compliment. She smiled, and for a moment the noise around them blurred into nothing. Antoine approached then, his expression smooth. He moved with the confidence of a man who expects welcome wherever he goes. Mademoiselle Moreau, he said, bowing over her hand, you grow more radiant with every passing day. I feared you might have forgotten the other poor gentleman in the room while you rescued our good comte from solitude. Elise returned the bow with a courteous nod. Monsieur Delacroix, she said, how kind of you to be concerned for the other gentlemen's feelings. I assure you they seem quite able to fend for themselves. Antoine straightened. His gaze flicked to Henri, then back to Elise. Comte d'Amblin, he said, allow me to congratulate you. You have secured the most admired partner of the evening. That is an accomplishment at which many will marvel. It was entirely mademoiselle's choice, Henri said quietly. I did nothing but accept her generosity. Ah, Antoine said, his smile thinning. Her generosity is famous. The poor, the unfortunate, the wounded. She has a tender heart for them all. Henri's hand tightened around his glass. Elise's eyes flashed. I do try to show kindness where I can, she said evenly. It seems a better use of time than sharpening one's tongue. A couple of listeners drew in quick breaths. Antoine's smile froze for a second, before he forced it back into place. Always your little barbs, mademoiselle, he said lightly. You must be careful. One day you will wound a man who deserves better. I am more afraid of wounding a man who has done nothing to deserve it, she replied. Those seem to be the easiest targets in this room. Henri shifted. Mademoiselle, he murmured. There is no need to. There is every need, she said softly to him, then turned her attention back to Antoine. Monsieur Delacroix, have you come to claim my next dance? I had thought to, he said, but now I wonder whether I ought to intervene. Perhaps you intend to devote the whole evening to our good comte. Her aunt made a faint choking noise. Elise regarded Antoine calmly. I intend to dance with whomever I wish, she said. Tonight, that includes Comte d'Amblin, and I do not regret it. Antoine's eyes cooled a degree. Of course, he said. Your independence is as charming as always. He stepped closer, lowering his voice, though not enough to prevent several people from hearing. May I speak frankly, mademoiselle? He asked. You may always try, she said. There are many in this room who look to you as an example, he said. Your choices carry no significance. It would be unfortunate if people misunderstood your intentions or misread your kindness as something more. You are worried they may think I have a mind of my own, she said. I am worried, he replied, that they will use your kindness as a reason to question your judgment. There are some reputations that are difficult to repair once damaged. Henri's jaw clenched. Monsieur Delacroix, if you are implying that my company damages Mademoiselle Moreau's reputation, I imply nothing, Antoine said with a small shrug. I merely repeat what I hear. People talk, Comte. I mean only to protect a lady I admire from unnecessary gossip. Elise's patience snapped, though her tone remained controlled. Then perhaps, she said, the best way to protect me from gossip would be to stop repeating it. Antoine's brows rose. Those who truly admire a lady, she went on, do not bring her whispers dressed as counsel. They put an end to them. The circle around them had grown. Some listeners turned their faces away, pretending not to be there. Others stared openly, hungry for every word. Antoine inclined his head slightly. You ask much of your admirers, mademoiselle, he said. I ask only that they respect my choices, she replied. If I wish to dance with Comte d'Amblin, that is my affair. Henri had never felt more conspicuous. He wished the floor would open and swallow him, yet at the same time he could not bear to move away and leave her to face this alone. Antoine's gaze flicked between them, weighing. If that is your wish, he said finally, then who am I to object? That is precisely my question, she said. There was a short silence. Then Antoine's smile returned, bright and practiced. Very well, he said. I would not wish to intrude on such a chord. Perhaps, mademoiselle, you will allow me a dance later, when your card has recovered from its shock. If my card permits, she replied. I shall hope it does, he said. He bowed again and withdrew with smooth steps, his face the picture of good humor. But as soon as his back was turned, the warmth drained from his eyes. One of his friends caught up with him near the doorway to the adjoining salon. "What did she say?" the man asked. "She looked ready to skewer you." Antoine gave a short laugh that held no mirth. "She is spirited, that is all." "Be careful, Delacroix," the friend said. "You may find yourself replaced by a more solid rival." Antoine's grip tightened on his empty glass. "Do not be absurd," he said. "He is a diversion, a subject for charity. Nothing more." "Her tone did not sound charitable," the friend observed. Antoine turned his head and watched Elise and Henri from a distance. They stood together still, exchanging quiet words, oblivious to the whispers. "Charity," Antoine said, "is a habit. Affection is something else entirely." "How can you be sure which this is?" the friend asked. Antoine's jaw set. "Because," he said softly, "I do not intend to let it become anything else." His friend laughed uneasily. "What do you mean?" Antoine did not answer. He watched as Henri inclined his head, as Elise smiled up at him, as they moved together toward the chairs near the wall. His gaze sharpened. In that moment he drew a silent, private conclusion. Whatever had begun between Elise Moreau and Henri Damblin tonight would go no further if he had any power to prevent it. The day after the winter ball, Paris spoke of little else. Servants carried stories from one house to another. Dressmakers heard them while fitting bodices. Shopkeepers heard them at their counters. Everywhere people repeated the same name, Elise, and the same question. Why had she danced with him? In the Damblin townhouse, Marcel paced Henri's study while Henri tried and failed to read a newspaper. "I tell you, Henri, I have heard at least 4 versions of what happened," Marcel said. "In one, you swept her off her feet so completely that she nearly fainted. In another, she rescued you from collapsing in the middle of the waltz." "I did not faint," Henri said, "and she did not rescue me from anything except an early departure." Marcel stopped pacing. "You did well, you danced, you spoke, you even laughed. That is more than you have done in months." Henri folded the paper. "It was an act of kindness, Marcel. I am grateful for it. But I am not foolish enough to read more than that into it." "You underestimate yourself," Marcel said. "And her." "Better that," Henri replied, "than to build dreams on a foundation of charity." Marcel sighed. "Have you considered that perhaps she enjoyed your company?" Henri hesitated. "Considered?" "Yes," he said quietly. "Believed? Not yet." Marcel opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. "You are hopeless," he muttered. "Still, hopeless or not, you must call." "Call?" Henri repeated. "Yes, leave your card. Ask if you may pay respects to her family. That is how these things are done." Henri stared at the desk. The thought of presenting himself at the Moreau house made his hands feel too large for his sleeves. "What if they refuse me?" he asked. "Then you will be no worse off than you were 2 days ago," Marcel said. "And if they do not—" He did not finish. He did not need to. By late afternoon, Henri's carriage stood before the Moreau residence. He did not go inside. He could not. He left his card with the butler, his voice steady only because he had rehearsed his single sentence the entire way. "For Mademoiselle Moreau," he said. "In appreciation of her kindness last evening." The butler bowed and took the card. Inside, in an upstairs salon, Elise sat by the window with her embroidery in her lap. Her aunt sorted ribbons on a nearby table. A maid entered, holding a small silver tray. "A card for Mademoiselle," she said. Her aunt's head snapped up. "From whom?" The maid read the name. "Comte Henri Damblin." Her aunt sighed. "It begins," she murmured. Elise reached for the card. "It is a calling card, not a proposal," she said. "May I see it?" Her aunt nodded, though her expression was wary. Elise looked at the neat writing, the simple "with gratitude" added in his own hand. A small warmth spread through her. "He is polite," she said. "He is persistent," her aunt answered. "What will you do?" "Nothing today," Elise said. "He has only left his name at the door. It would be rude not to acknowledge it. If he calls properly, we will receive him." Her aunt pressed her lips together. "Your father will wish to know," she said. "My father," Elise replied, "wishes above all that I marry a fortune." "Your father wishes that you be provided for," her aunt corrected gently. "He does not want to see you struggle." Elise looked back at the card. "Perhaps Henri Damblin knows something about struggle," she said. A week later, Henri called again. This time the butler did not send him away. He bowed and said, "If Monsieur le Comte would be so kind as to wait, I will inquire whether Mademoiselle is at home." Henri nodded, his hands clasped behind his back to hide their tension. He was shown into a modest but tastefully furnished salon. He stood near a chair but did not sit. The clock ticked once, twice, 10 times. When the door opened, he half expected a refusal. Instead, Elise entered. She wore a simple day dress, her hair arranged more casually than at the ball. Without the chandeliers and music, she seemed somehow even more herself. "Comte d'Amblin," she said, offering a slight curtsy. "You honor our house." "It is I who am honored, mademoiselle," he replied, bowing. "Thank you for receiving me." Her aunt followed, taking a place in a nearby chair with her work basket. She nodded to him politely, a silent reminder that this was a supervised visit. "Please sit," Elise said. Henri lowered himself carefully into the nearest chair. He felt the wood creak faintly and hoped no one else noticed. "I wish to thank you in person," he said, "for your kindness at the winter ball. Your decision to dance with me was unexpected." "Unexpected kindness is often the most needed," she said. "I'm glad I was there at the proper moment." "I fear my cousin will never forgive you," Henri added. Her brows lifted. "Forgive me?" "He swore that if no lady would dance with me, he would drag me onto the floor himself and suffer the consequences," Henri said. "You spared him that ordeal. His feet have been saved." She laughed, a quick, clear sound. "Then I am doubly pleased." Her aunt coughed softly. "The ball was delightful," she interjected. "We enjoyed it very much. The hosts were quite generous." "Yes," Henri said, "very generous. The food was abundant. Even I could not complain." The words slipped out before he could stop them. He winced, ready for the awkward silence. Instead, Elise smiled. "I had heard a rumor that the pastry table was nearly emptied," she said. "Perhaps you are not the only one who could not complain." He relaxed just a little. They spoke of safer things then: music, books, the weather. Elise asked about his estate. He described recent improvements without boasting. She asked about his tenants. He spoke of their hardships in a matter-of-fact tone. "You care for them," she observed. "They work the land that feeds us all," he replied. "I would be a fool not to care." Her aunt listened, her expression turning thoughtful, despite herself. After half an hour, Henri rose. "I have taken too much of your time," he said. "Thank you for receiving me, mademoiselle, madame." "You are welcome, comte," Elise said. The time passed very pleasantly. Her aunt added, "Indeed, you are always welcome to call from time to time." Henri bowed again. As he left, he felt something surprising. Not triumph, not excitement, but hope. Fragile, yes, but real. Visits became more frequent. Not enough to cause scandal, but enough to be noticed. Henri called once a week, sometimes twice. When he could not, he sent a brief note and a book he thought she might enjoy. He never stayed long. He always watched the clock, careful not to overstep. In those short visits, they spoke of many things that had nothing to do with dancing or gossip. She told him of her brother's adventures in the south of France. He told her of a school he wished to fund in one of his villages. She confessed her frustration with the way some young men spoke to her, as though she were a child. "I am always being told what I should desire," she said. "Security, comfort, a husband who will present well. Yet when I ask if I might also desire respect and companionship, I am told that I ask too much." "Perhaps those who say so are afraid," he said. "Of what?" she asked. "Of looking into their own hearts and finding that they desire less," he replied. She watched him for a long moment. "You speak very plainly," she said. "I speak plainly with you," he answered. While their connection deepened, another conversation took place across the city. Antoine sat in a private sitting room with a man in a dark suit. A decanter of brandy stood between them. "I am told you were recommended by Monsieur de Valmont," Antoine said. "He spoke highly of your discretion." The man inclined his head. "I provide financial services," he said carefully. "Sometimes those services require information, but always within the bounds of propriety." "Propriety is such a flexible word," Antoine said. "I require information about the Moreau family, their debts, their investments, their stability." The man hesitated. "That is very specific." "And very profitable," Antoine said, pouring 2 glasses. He pushed one toward the man. I am considering a partnership with Monsieur Moreau, but I do not walk into ventures blind. The man took the glass. Of course, he said, no one should. Within a week, Antoine had what he wanted. He sat alone in his study, reading the summary with growing satisfaction. There were unpaid bills, mortgages, a few unwise investments. Nothing that screamed ruin, but enough that a serious shock could push the family into real difficulty. He tapped one finger on the parchment. Poor Moreau, he murmured. So many expenses. Such a desire to maintain appearances. He saw the path clearly now. He would offer help graciously. He would present himself as a savior. In return, he would secure what he wanted. A few days later, Monsieur Moreau received him in his own modest study. I confess, Monsieur Delacroix, I was surprised by your letter, Monsieur Moreau said. You speak of possible investments? Antoine smiled. I speak of opportunities, he said. I have reason to believe that certain ventures will be profitable in the coming year. I will require partners. I thought of you. You are very kind, Monsieur Moreau said, though his tone held caution. I am not certain I am in a position to undertake grand risks. This would not be a grand risk, Antoine said smoothly, and I would ensure that any arrangements were favorable, particularly for a future family connection. Monsieur Moreau's hand tightened on the arm of his chair. A family connection? He repeated. Antoine allowed his eyes to drift toward a small portrait on the wall. Elise at 16, smiling. I have admired your daughter for some time, he said. Her grace, her intelligence, her composure. I hope you will not find me presumptuous in saying that I would consider it an honor to seek her hand. Monsieur Moreau swallowed. This is unexpected, he said slowly. Elise has many admirers. I am sure she does, Antoine replied, but few with my prospects. The words were confident without being crass. Monsieur Moreau heard in them the promise of security. He also heard, unspoken, the threat of what might happen without such support. My finances are my concern, Monsieur Moreau said stiffly. And I do not presume to pry, Antoine answered. But I am not blind. I know that the last years have been demanding. I would like to relieve some of that burden if I can. A marriage between our families would make many arrangements possible. Monsieur Moreau sat in silence. He thought of unpaid bills. He thought of his wife's worried looks when she believed he was not watching. He thought of Elise laughing with her friends, unaware of how tight the numbers had become. She is very attached to her independence, he said. And I admire that, Antoine replied. I do not wish to break her spirit, only to guide it. Guide, Monsieur Moreau repeated, tasting the word. I will not pressure you, Antoine said, rising. Think on it. We may speak again. In the meantime, I remain at your service. He left, leaving the idea behind, like a seed dropped into a crack. That evening, Monsieur Moreau sent for his daughter. She entered his study with a small smile. You wish to see me, Papa? Yes, my dear, he said. Sit down. There is something we must discuss. She sat opposite him, hands folded in her lap. Has something happened? She asked. In a sense, he said. We have received an indication of interest. Her eyes narrowed. From whom? Antoine Delacroix, he said. He spoke to me today about business and about you. She exhaled, a sound halfway between a sigh and a groan. Papa, she said. Hear me, Elise, he said gently. He is a man of means, of position. He is admired. A marriage to him would secure our family's future. I knew the future would arrive, she said. I did not know it would knock so loudly. This is not a jest, he said. You know our situation is not as strong as it once was. I know we have had to dismiss 2 servants, she said. I know we argue over the cost of coal. I am not blind, he winced. I did not wish to worry you. I am your daughter, she replied. I worry whether you wish it or not. He rubbed his forehead. Then you understand why I must take this seriously. I understand why you feel you must, she said. But what of what I feel? His shoulders sagged. I do care about your feelings, Elise. You are not a parcel to be exchanged. But there are times when we must think of more than our own hearts. And who thought of your heart when you married Mamma? She asked softly. He blinked. What do you mean? Did you choose her because she had a strong dowry? She asked. Did you weigh her like a ledger? Or did you marry her because you loved her? He looked away. Both things can be true, he said. Then why should I be asked to ignore one of them, she asked. He had no answer. I am not saying I will never marry, she went on. I know I must, but I will not marry a man I cannot respect. Do you believe Antoine is unworthy of respect, he asked. She thought of Antoine's cool smile, his careful words, the way he had repeated gossip as though it were concern. I believe he respects himself very much, she said. That is not an answer, her father said. No, she admitted, because I do not have a complete answer yet. I am still learning who he is. And the Comte d'Amblin? He asked suddenly. Are you learning who he is as well? She met his gaze. Yes, she said, he sighed. People are talking, Elise. They always are, she said. What are they saying now? That you show unusual attention to him, he said. That your compassion may be leading you into uncomfortable territory. Uncomfortable for whom? She asked. For you, he said. For us. And for those who find him an easy target, she added. Her father hesitated. He is not a usual choice. I am not a usual daughter, she said. He rubbed his temples. I only ask that you be cautious. Do not give Delacroix reason to withdraw his interest, at least not until we are sure where we stand. You are asking me to balance one man's pride against another's dignity, she said quietly. That is a heavy task. I'm asking you, he said, to remember that your decisions affect more than yourself. I remember it every day, she replied. More than you know. She left his study with her heart heavy. Days turned into weeks. Henri's visits continued, though Elise noticed a new tension in her father's eyes each time his name was announced. Antoine's presence also increased. He appeared at dinners, at musicales, at afternoon calls. Always courteous, always attentive. Your song last night was a triumph, he told her one day. You held the room in your hand. Perhaps I should market tickets, she said. We could use the income. He smiled. You make light of serious matters with such grace. It is charming. But there is no need. You need only make one decision, and all questions of income will vanish. She did not ask which decision. She knew. At gatherings, society watched a quiet drama unfold. Some saw a handsome, ambitious man pursuing the most admired lady of the season. Others saw that same lady speaking in corners with a large, quiet count, whose presence made some uncomfortable. The gossip took shape slowly. I heard she feels sorry for him, a lady whispered at tea. He is so lonely. She has always had a tender heart. Tender hearts can be foolish, another said. She must take care. If she attaches herself too closely, she may find it difficult to detach. I heard, a third added, lowering her voice, that his estate is not as prosperous as he pretends. He may be looking to buy himself a wife with what little he has. Surely not, someone protested. He seems honorable. Honor and desperation can coexist, the third replied. The whispers spread. No one knew exactly where they began. Some came from acquaintances of Antoine, who repeated speculation as though it were fact. Others came from those who simply enjoyed the taste of scandal. One afternoon, Henri arrived at a small salon where a musical rehearsal was taking place. Elise was there, seated at the piano, helping a friend with a duet. When Henri entered, conversations flickered. A few women glanced at each other. One gentleman smirked. Henri greeted the hostess, bowed to Elise's aunt, and moved to a quiet corner. Elise finished the piece and joined him. Comte, she said, I did not expect to see you here. Nor I you, he said. I came to hear music. I did not realize I would also see the source of most of it. She smiled. If I am the source, then I fear the supply is uneven. They spoke for a few minutes. He asked about the piece she had played. She asked about the book he carried under his arm. For a brief time the room faded. Then a shrill laugh cut through the air. Really, Marianne, if I spent so much time with charity cases, my mother would lock me in my room, a young voice said. Henri stiffened. Elise turned her head slightly. Across the room, two girls bent their heads together, clearly unaware of how well their words carried. Oh, hush, the other said. He is not a charity case. He is a count. That makes him an opportunity. An opportunity for crushed toes, the first replied. I would rather marry a clerk with good ankles. They giggled. Henri's hand closed around the spine of his book. Please excuse me, mademoiselle, he said. I must speak to our hostess. Elise reached out. Henri, he forced a small smile. I will return. He did not. He left early, claiming a sudden headache. That evening, Marcel found him staring at the fire in his study, the book still in his hand, unopened. "You left quickly," Marcel said. "Was the music not to your liking?" "The music was fine," Henri said. "The voices between the songs were less so." Marcel sank into a chair. "What happened now?" "Nothing new," Henri answered. "They laughed. They speculated. They counted my steps before I took them." Marcel frowned. "About you and Elise?" Henri's gaze shifted to the fire. "I do not know how much reaches her ears. I hope very little." Marcel hesitated. "Henri, people will always talk. The question is whether you let them dictate your life." "It is not my life that concerns me," Henri said. "It is hers." Across the city, in another drawing room, Antoine listened as a distant cousin recounted the same musical afternoon with unrestrained amusement. "You should have heard them," the cousin said. "They were merciless. And the best part, Elise moved toward him as though she heard nothing at all." Antoine swirled his wine. "Did she seem affected?" "She seemed determined," the cousin said. "It is almost as though she enjoys defying expectation." "Defiance can be charming," Antoine said, "until it becomes inconvenient." "Do you still intend to pursue her?" the cousin asked. "With the Count in the way, it may be more trouble than it is worth." Antoine's smile hardened. "On the contrary," he said, "I do not back away from trouble, I shape it." The next phase of his plan was simple. He did not attack Henri directly. He spoke instead of motives. At a card game, he said, "Our friend Damblin is a good man, but he is lonely. A lonely man may cling to any hand offered to him." At a supper, he remarked, "Mademoiselle Moreau is clever. She knows how to use her compassion. It keeps men near without requiring any promises." To a lady of influence, he confided, "I worry for her. People misunderstand her tenderness. They may say she is attaching herself to a man out of pity. Such misunderstandings can harm a young lady's chances." The words spread. Each listener added a little flourish. Soon the narrative grew. Henri was desperate. Elise pitied him. She might be using him to appear virtuous, or worse, she might be foolish enough to think affection could overcome the practicalities of life. One evening, as Henri prepared to leave his house for yet another gathering, his butler entered, holding a folded note. "This arrived by hand, monsieur," the butler said. "From whom?" Henri asked. "The seal is from the de Villiers household," the butler replied, "but the handwriting is unfamiliar." Henri opened it. The writing inside was indeed unfamiliar. It was careful, with a slightly nervous slant. "Comte Damblin, forgive the liberty I take in writing. I do so because I bear you no ill will and cannot remain silent. You are spoken of much these days in connection with Mademoiselle Moreau. I beg you to consider that not all attentions are what they appear. Her family is not in a position to refuse a great offer should it come. Monsieur Delacroix has made his interest known. Many say this match is inevitable. They say also that Mademoiselle Moreau is kind, and that her kindness may be mistaken by those who hope too much. I write only so that you may protect yourself from greater hurt. I remain a well-wisher." Henri read it twice. The words blurred slightly. He could not decide which stung more, the suggestion that Elise's heart was already promised, or the implication that he was hoping beyond his station. He folded the letter very carefully and placed it on the desk. "Shall I bring your coat, monsieur?" the butler asked quietly. Henri did not answer at once. He stared at the folded paper, as if it were a stone placed in the middle of a path he had been walking with his eyes closed. "No," he said at last, "I will not go out this evening." "As you wish, monsieur," the butler said, withdrawing. Alone in the study, Henri sank into his chair. He stared at the fire until the flames blurred into a single wavering light. Perhaps, he thought, the cruelest thing he could do to Elise was to remain near her and give people more reason to laugh. Perhaps the kindest thing would be to remove himself from her life before she had to choose between him and the future everyone insisted she must want. Henri kept his word to himself. For a full week, he did not call at the Moreau house. He did not send books or notes. He did not attend the smaller gatherings where he knew Elise would be. When invitations arrived, he declined them with polite regrets. He told himself it was for her sake. If he stayed away, the whispers would die. If he removed his large, inconvenient figure from her side, people would find new targets. At first he believed the silence would feel like relief. It did not. At the Moreau residence, Elise sat by the window one afternoon, staring at an embroidery hoop she had not touched in an hour. Her aunt watched her. "You will make that poor flower wither before you finish it," her aunt said. "You have not taken a single stitch." Elise blinked and looked down. "I lost count," she murmured. "Of the stitches or of the days?" her aunt asked gently. Elise said nothing. Her aunt sighed. "He has not called," she said. "It has been 8 days. 9 if you count the day after his last visit." "I am capable of counting," Elise said, a little sharply. "Then you know I am not exaggerating," her aunt replied. "Perhaps he has been ill." "He might be," Elise said. "Or he might be busy. Or he might have decided that my company is more trouble than it is worth." Her aunt hesitated. "You have other admirers," she said carefully. "Antoine Delacroix, for one." Elise set the hoop on her lap. "Antoine Delacroix," she repeated. "He calls so often that the servants can now predict the hour." "And your father's expression when he arrives," her aunt said. "That may be the most telling part." "My father sees in him numbers on a page," Elise said. "Profits and security. It is difficult to argue with such clear arithmetic." "Have you tried?" her aunt asked. "Yes," Elise said. "He listens. He worries. Then he reminds me that the house is cold and the bills are warm." Her aunt looked at her with sympathy. "I do not say Antoine is your only choice," she said, "but you must understand the weight your father carries." "I understand it," Elise answered. "I feel it every time I see him sorting papers at midnight." Her aunt hesitated. "And what do you feel when you think of the Count?" she asked. Elise looked out the window. The street was quiet, the sky pale. "I feel—" She searched for the right word. "I feel that when I speak he hears all my sentences, not only the parts that please him. I feel that when he looks at me, he does not see a solution to a problem. He sees a person. And that is not enough for a lifetime," her aunt said softly, "but it is not a bad beginning." Before Elise could answer, a servant appeared at the door. "Mademoiselle," he said, "your father requests your presence in his study." Her aunt and Elise exchanged a look. "He has been with Monsieur Delacroix," her aunt whispered as they walked together down the corridor. "I heard the door close an hour ago." "I thought you were darning socks," Elise said. "I was," her aunt replied, "but my ears were not." They reached the study. Her aunt stopped outside. "He asked for you, not for both of us," she said. "Go on." Elise entered. Her father sat at his desk, papers spread before him, his expression uneasy. Antoine sat in a chair by the window, perfectly composed. "Ah, Elise," her father said. "Come in, my dear." "Papa, Monsieur Delacroix," she said, curtsying slightly. Antoine rose. "Mademoiselle," he said, bowing. "You grow lovelier each time I see you. That would require very frequent visits," she said. "Which I admit we have been experiencing." Her father cleared his throat. "Sit down, child," he said. "We have been speaking of arrangements." "Yes," Antoine said smoothly. "Your father and I have discussed certain business partnerships that could be of great benefit to your family. And connected to that, I have asked his permission to approach you with a more personal proposal." Her fingers tightened around her skirts. "I see," she said. "It is now your father's wish that I speak freely," Antoine continued. "I will not do you the discourtesy of vague hints. I admire you, Mademoiselle Moreau. I admire your beauty, your intelligence, your composure. I would be honored if you would consent to become my wife." Her heart thudded. She glanced at her father. His eyes were on her, hopeful and anxious. "Antoine has been very generous," he said. "He is prepared to support certain enterprises that would secure our position. He is a man of standing. You would not lack for anything." "Except choice," Elise said quietly. "You would have more choices than most women," her father replied. "Travel, comfort, independence in everything that matters." "Everything?" she asked. "Or everything that does not touch his pride?" Antoine smiled as if she had made a charming joke. "I do not wish to cage you, mademoiselle," he said, "only to stand beside you. Together we would be admired, envied, respected." "And what of happiness?" she asked. "Happiness follows respect in time," he said. "It is difficult to be happy when one is struggling to pay bills." Her father flinched. "Elise," he said, "this is not a time for riddles. This is a serious offer." "I know," she said. "That is why I must answer it seriously." She turned to Antoine. "Monsieur Delacroix," she said, "I do not deny that you are charming, or that your offer would solve many of our practical worries, but I cannot accept a proposal from a man I do not trust." Antoine's brows rose. "You do not trust me?" he repeated. "I do not know you," she said. "Not truly. I know your smile. I know your compliments. I know your interest in how the world sees you. I do not know what you are when the room is empty." He laughed lightly. "You are harsh, mademoiselle. Surely you cannot know the interior of any man's mind." "You are right," she said. "But I have seen enough to know that when gossip reaches you, you carry it like a gift to those who should never receive it." Her father frowned. "What is this about gossip?" he asked. Antoine spread his hands. "I have only ever wished to protect her," he said. "There has been talk, as you know." "Talk about whom?" she asked. "About you," he said. "And the Count." She lifted her chin. "And who repeated that talk to me?" she asked. "I merely warned you," he said, "that too much closeness with him might be misinterpreted." "By people like you," she said. Her father interjected, flustered. "We are wandering from the matter. Elise, you cannot simply reject an offer like this without thought." "I have thought," she said. "For many nights. I have weighed what I owe you and Mamma against what I owe myself. I cannot marry a man simply because he is the solution to a column of numbers." Tears pricked her eyes. She swallowed them. "I will not say yes," she told Antoine. "Not now. Not later." Silence fell. Antoine's smile faded, revealing the steel beneath. "Is this your final answer?" he asked. "Yes," she said. He turned to Monsieur Moreau. "You see," he said quietly, "I feared her head might be turned by a certain other interest." "I have made my own decision," Elise said. "No one turned my head. I turned it myself." Antoine looked back at her. "You choose poverty over security," he said. "For what?" "A man who hides in his house because some children giggled at him." Her hands clenched. "You know nothing of him," she said. "I know enough," Antoine replied. "He is not your equal." "On the contrary," she said. "In some ways, he surpasses me." Her father closed his eyes for a moment. "Gentlemen do not speak ill of other gentlemen in front of ladies," he said to Antoine, his tone strained. "And ladies do not throw away their futures for the sake of sentiment," Antoine shot back. "But perhaps Paris is changing." He stood. "I will not beg," he said. "I do not need to. There are other alliances to be made." He bowed stiffly to Monsieur Moreau. "I wish you the best, sir. You may find my absence from your accounts noticeable." Monsieur Moreau went pale. Antoine turned to Elise. "If you regret this decision," he said, "it will be in silence. You cannot call me back." "I would not," she said. He left. The door closed with more force than politeness allowed. For a long moment, father and daughter faced each other. "I am sorry," she whispered. He shook his head. "You have nothing to apologize for," he said. "It was my weakness that let him speak to me, as if my child were a bargaining chip." "You are not weak," she said. "You are tired. There is a difference." He sank into his chair. "What will we do now?" he said. "The bills will not vanish with his footsteps." She crossed the room and knelt by his chair, taking his hand. "We will do what everyone does," she said. "We will manage. We will cut where we can. We will seek honest arrangements with people who do not require our souls in collateral." He stared at her. "And your marriage?" he asked. "What will you do about that?" "I will wait," she said. "I will wait until I can say yes without closing my eyes." He laughed once, bitterly and tenderly at the same time. "You are your mother's daughter," he said. "She once turned down a proposal from a duke because she said he looked at her as though she were a painting." "Did she regret it?" Elise asked. "Never," he said, "even when we had to sell the carriage." She smiled through the sting in her nose. Later that week, an invitation arrived for a winter soirée at the home of Madame de Saint-Clair. It promised music and dancing, but on a smaller scale than the great ball. Her aunt waved the card. "You must go," she said. "If you stay home, people will say you are hiding, and I do not think you know how to hide." "I know how," Elise said. "I simply dislike it." Her aunt lowered her voice. "He will be there," she said. "Which he?" Elise asked. "Both," her aunt replied. "Delacroix attends every gathering that allows him to preen, and I have it on good authority that the Count has accepted as well." "How?" Elise asked. "He has not been anywhere." "Men talk in clubs," her aunt said. Marcel was overheard telling someone that he had dragged his cousin into fresh air. A tiny spark lit in Elise. "Then I will go," she said. On the night of the soirée, the St. Clair drawing rooms were crowded, but not overflowing. The air felt less heavy than at the great ball. There was music, but also corners where conversations could drift without being smothered by sound. Elise entered on her father's arm, heads turned. Some smiled genuinely, some critically. She felt the weight of it all, then set her shoulders. Her aunt leaned close. "Remember," she whispered, "you owe no one an explanation." "I always feel as if I owe the whole city an explanation," Elise replied. "Perhaps tonight I will stop paying." Her eyes scanned the room. She saw Antoine first near the fireplace, surrounded by admirers. His gaze slid toward her, cool and assessing, then away, as though she were no longer worth the effort. So be it, she thought. Then she saw Henri. He stood near a table of music scores, half hidden by a tall vase. His coat was dark, his expression guarded. He looked as if he were stealing a few moments of quiet before returning to the storm. Their gazes met across the room. For one instant, the conversations, the music, the fluttering fans all blurred. There was only the look in his eyes, surprise, longing, and something like apology. Her heart gave a sharp, painful little leap. She did not wait. "Papa," she said, "I see Madame de St. Clair. I should greet her." "I will join you in a moment," he said, already captured by an acquaintance. Her aunt murmured, "I will speak to your father. Go." She moved through the crowd, exchanging nods and polite words without slowing. When she reached Henri, he started as though waking. "Mademoiselle Moreau," he said, bowing. "Good evening." "Good evening, Comte," she replied. "You have been very quiet." "I have discovered that silence is underrated," he said. "In your case," she said, "I disagree." He looked down, his mouth tightening. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I should have written. I should have called. I did neither." "Yes," she said. "You should have." He flinched slightly. "I feared that my presence was causing you harm," he said. "The gossip has grown louder. Your name is in it as much as mine." "My name has been in gossip since I was 17 and refused to faint when a gentleman expected it," she said. "You are not the cause. You are simply the current excuse." "I received a letter," he admitted. "Anonymous, but written with the confidence of someone who believed they knew what was best for me. They advised me to protect myself from greater hurt." She inhaled. "And you believed them?" she asked. "I believed," he said slowly, "that your family's situation might require a different choice than the one my heart would wish you to make. I did not wish to make that choice harder for you." "So you made it alone," she said, "on my behalf, without asking what I wanted." He winced. "When you put it so plainly, it sounds arrogant," he said. "It was," she replied. "Arrogant and cowardly." "You are not a coward, Henri. Do not behave like one." He lifted his head, startled at her use of his given name. "You are angry," he said. "Yes," she answered. "I am angry, not because you considered my position, that I can forgive. I am angry because you assumed you knew my heart better than I do." "Forgive me," he said. "I have become accustomed to assuming that others know what is best for me. It did not occur to me that I might be guilty of the same sin." She exhaled, some of the tension draining from her shoulders. "You are forgiven," she said, "on one condition." "Name it," he replied. "That you speak plainly now," she said. "No more disappearing, no more protecting me from myself." He looked at her. For the first time in weeks, he let the wall inside him crack. "Very well," he said quietly. "Plainly then, I love you." The world narrowed to the space between them. He did not look away as he spoke. "I tried not to," he said. "I told myself it was dangerous, that it was unfair, that it burdened you with more than you needed. I tried to content myself with being your grateful friend. It failed. Every time I left your house, the air felt thinner. Every time I did not see you, the day seemed longer. I know what people say, I know what they see when they look at me. But when you look at me, I feel less like a joke and more like a man. I love you for that. And for much more." Her throat tightened. "Why did you not say this weeks ago?" she whispered. "Because I feared that if I spoke you would feel bound by pity to answer kindly," he said, "and I would rather have your silence than your pity." "And what makes you think I pity you?" she asked. "The entire city does," he said. "Why should you be different?" "Because I'm not the entire city," she said. "Because I know that pity bends the back and love straightens it. You stand taller when you are with me. That is not pity." His eyes shone. "Elise," he said. "Yes," she answered softly. "I will also speak plainly. I love you, not because the city mocks you, nor because it pleases me to shock them. I love you because when you see a servant struggle, you help without being seen. I love you because you listen when I speak and remember what I say. I love you because you try so hard to cause no one harm, even at your own expense. You are not a project. You are not a charity. You are a man I choose." For a moment he could not answer. His hand gripped the music scores so tightly the pages crinkled. "Do you understand what you are doing?" he asked finally. "What you will endure if you stand beside me?" "I do," she said. "And I am tired of enduring other people's expectations. I would rather endure their laughter with you than their approval with someone else." He closed his eyes briefly, as if mastering himself. When he opened them, they were steady. "Then I will not run again," he said. "Unless you send me away yourself." "I will not," she replied. A piano melody began in the next room. Madame de Saint-Clair called guests to gather for an announcement. There was a sense of anticipation in the air. "Come," Elise said. "Let us go where everyone can see us." "Is that wise?" he asked. "No," she said. "It is necessary." They entered the main salon together. Heads turned immediately, as if pulled by an invisible string. Conversations faltered, then resumed in a different tone. Madame de Saint-Clair stood near the fireplace, beaming. "My friends," she called, "I am delighted to welcome you tonight. Before the music begins, Monsieur Delacroix has asked for a moment to address you." Antoine stepped forward, smiling as if the room belonged to him. "How gracious of our hostess," he said. "I promise to be brief. I would not wish to stand between anyone and the waltz." Polite laughter rippled. "I merely wish to dispel a little confusion that has been drifting through our circles," he said. "There has been much talk of matches and misunderstandings. Allow me to clarify one thing. I have no intention of pursuing a certain alliance that some of you may have expected." Several people glanced at Elise. "I treasure my freedom too much," Antoine continued smoothly. "And I would not wish to entangle myself where other interests have taken root. I am a generous soul." The laughter was sharper now. Someone murmured, "So he leaves her to the giant after all." Elise felt heat climb her neck. She saw her father stiffen. She saw her aunt grip her fan so tightly it bent. Henri took a half step back, ready to retreat into the crowd. "No," Elise said under her breath. "Stay." Antoine spread his arms a little. "Of course, I wish nothing but happiness for Mademoiselle Moreau," he said. "If she finds it in unexpected company, who are we to judge? We can only hope she will not regret exchanging one future for another." The implication was clear. He was the future she had rejected. Henri's fingers curled. He began, "Mademoiselle, I will not let them—" "You will," she said, "but you will not let them finish." She stepped forward. "Madame de Saint-Clair," she said loudly, before Antoine could speak again. "May I borrow a moment?" Madame de Saint-Clair blinked. "But of course, dear," she said. Elise turned to the room. "I thank Monsieur Delacroix for his concern," she said. "It is touching that he wishes to keep everyone so well informed of his intentions. Since he speaks so freely of them, I will do the same." A hush fell. Even the servants paused. She continued, her voice steady. "Several weeks ago, Monsieur Delacroix approached my father about a possible marriage," she said. "At the same time, he offered to arrange certain financial matters in my father's favor. The two subjects were presented, side by side." A murmur ran through the crowd. "My father was tempted," she went on. "Any man in his position would be. But in the end, he allowed me to choose. I said no, not because I am ungrateful for the offer of security, but because I cannot accept a proposal that treats my future as a reward for rescuing our accounts." Antoine's face remained outwardly calm, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. "Is that not what all matches are?" someone challenged weakly. "Arrangements and advantages. They need not be," Elise said. "My parents married for affection as well as prudence. I hope to do the same. I do not condemn those who make other choices. I only insist on making my own." Her father stepped forward then, surprising everyone, including her. "My daughter speaks the truth," he said. "I allowed myself to be dazzled by the idea of being saved, but I realized that no fortune is worth the price of her trust. Monsieur Delacroix's offer was generous. It was also conditional. I cannot accept that condition." He lifted his chin. "We will manage. We may be less comfortable, but we will keep our self-respect and our daughter." A few older gentlemen nodded faintly, remembering their own younger selves. Antoine laughed, though the sound was strained. "So you make me sound like a villain in a cheap novel," he said. "I merely offered help and repeated gossip," Elise added. "You warned me against closeness with Comte d'Amblin. You suggested that my kindness would be misunderstood. Yet you yourself repeated every whisper to those who could hurt us. Forgive me if I question your definition of protection." Several ladies looked at one another, recalling things he had said to them under the cloak of concern. Henri knew he should remain silent. This was her moment, yet he felt that to say nothing would be a kind of cowardice. He stepped forward too, stopping at her side. "If anyone must be blamed for gossip, let it be me," he said. "I do not blend easily into rooms like this. I am not what this city expects in a courtier. I know it. I have heard it my entire life, but I will say this plainly. I have never sought to buy favor. I have not offered anyone money in exchange for their hand or their silence. The only thing I have offered Mademoiselle Moreau is respect. If that has caused trouble, the fault is mine." He turned to Monsieur Moreau. "Sir," he said, "I have not yet had the courage to ask you this directly. I feared that doing so would bind you to a choice you could not easily accept. But I can no longer pretend that my heart is not involved. I love your daughter. If she will have me, I hope one day to ask for her hand properly, not as a rescuer, not as a benefactor, simply as a man who wishes to honor her." The room held its breath. Monsieur Moreau looked at Henri a long time. He saw the strain in the man's shoulders, the way he stood as if ready to absorb any blow. He also saw the way Elise breathed more easily with Henri beside her. "You are not what I imagined for her," Monsieur Moreau said slowly. "When she was little, I pictured a prince out of a tale. Slim, graceful, glittering." "Then I apologize," Henri said. "I am much less graceful than any prince, and much more honest than many," Monsieur Moreau replied. "You came to me with your heart in your hand, not an account book. That counts for something." He turned to his daughter. "You say you love him?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "And you understand that this will not be an easy road?" he asked. "People will talk. Some will be cruel." "They already are," she said. "Yet when I am with him, their voices fade. That must mean something." He nodded slowly. "Then I will not stand in your way," he said. "I would rather see you walking a difficult road with a man you trust than a comfortable one with a man who treats you as part of his capital." He faced Henri again. "I give you no formal answer tonight," he said. "That requires quieter rooms and sober minds. But know this, I no longer see you as an impossible choice, only a challenging one, and I have never known my daughter to turn away from a challenge she truly desired." Relief and gratitude surged through Henri so strongly he had to steady himself. "Thank you," he said. "That is more than I expected, and more than I deserve." Antoine watched, his jaw tight. "So this is how it is," he said softly. "The city's most admired lady chooses to tie herself to a man they mock. You gamble with more than your own reputation, mademoiselle. You gamble with your family's." "My family has already wagered something," she said. "Their comfort for my sake. I will not prove myself unworthy of that by selling myself cheaply." He inclined his head, a sardonic gesture. "Then I wish you joy," he said. "You will need it." He walked away. This time, fewer people followed him. The tension in the room loosened, like a held breath finally released. Conversations resumed, first cautiously, then more freely. Madame de Saint-Clair clapped her hands, a little too brightly. "Well," she said, "that was more entertaining than any play. Now, if our pianists will begin, perhaps we may have some music that involves less speaking and more listening." Laughter rippled. The orchestra struck up a waltz. Henri looked at Elise. "I fear I have ruined another gathering for you," he said. "You have improved it," she replied, "at least for me." He hesitated. "May I ask, would you dance with me again? Or have you used all your courage for the evening?" She smiled. "I have courage enough," she said. And you. Do you have enough not to count every stair? I will attempt it, he said. They stepped onto the floor. As they began to move, the whispers stirred again, but something had shifted. Some faces held curiosity rather than malice. A few older couples watched with faint approval. Even those who still disapproved did so more quietly. They danced. Henri's steps were less hesitant than at the winter ball. Elise's hand rested lightly in his, her eyes steady on his face. The music carried them through the room that had so often been his enemy. You stood very bravely, he said. You did not tremble once. I trembled inside, she admitted. But you were there. That helped. I was more afraid than I have ever been, he said. And yet you spoke, she answered. That helped as well. He smiled. We make a good alliance then. Your courage, my stubbornness. And a shared talent for upsetting expectations, she added. They turned, the chandeliers circling above them. Near the wall, Monsieur Moreau watched, his arm linked with his sister-in-law's. His face was still lined with worry, but his eyes were softer. You see, his sister-in-law murmured. She is not porcelain. She is steel with a ribbon on it. He chuckled quietly. You were always fond of dramatic phrases, he said. And you were always afraid of them, she replied. Trust her, Henri. She knows what she is doing. He nodded more to himself than to her. On the other side of the room, Antoine accepted a glass of wine from a servant he did not see. His gaze was on the dancing couple. You have lost, monsieur, one of his companions whispered. Let it go. Antoine's eyes narrowed. I have lost this match, he said, not the entire game. But even as he spoke, something in his expression admitted a truth he would never say aloud. The game that mattered most had slipped out of his hands. The waltz ended. Henri and Elise bowed to each other. For a moment the room seemed balanced on the edge of something new. Henri, she said softly, will you come to the house tomorrow? If your father permits it, he said. I believe he will, she replied. There are quieter rooms where we can speak of formal things. He took a breath that felt like the first full one in years. Then yes, he said. I will come. Henri stood outside the Moreau house the next afternoon with his hat in his hands. The sky was grey, the air cold, but his palms were damp. He had ridden into storms with steadier nerves. He watched his breath fog in front of him and wondered for the 100th time if he was a fool. The door opened. The Moreau butler bowed. Monsieur le Comte, he said. Monsieur Moreau and Mademoiselle are expecting you. Expecting. The word steadied him a little. He followed the butler through the familiar corridor. Every step felt heavier and lighter at once. At the study door, the butler announced him and withdrew. Monsieur Moreau stood by the window. Elise was there as well, seated in a chair to the side, her hands folded together. She looked up as Henri entered, and something in her expression, warm, calm, certain, gave him courage. Comte d'Amblin, Monsieur Moreau said, thank you for coming so promptly. Thank you for receiving me, Henri replied. He bowed first to the father, then to the daughter. Mademoiselle, Henri, she said softly. Her father gestured to a chair. Sit, sir. Let us speak plainly, as we began yesterday. Henri sat, his back straight. He did not trust himself to lean on anything. I would like to spare you a long speech, he said, but I am not certain that is possible. Monsieur Moreau's mouth twitched. There are moments when speeches are unavoidable, he said. This seems to be one. Henri drew a breath. I have already told you what is in my heart, he said. But allow me to say it again in the quiet of this room. I love your daughter. I admire her mind, her courage, her sense of justice. I admire the way she does not bend herself to please people who do not deserve it. She sees more than others do, and she still remains kind. That is too rare. He glanced at Elise. She watched him without looking away. I do not offer you dazzling beauty or perfect grace, he continued, half smiling. I cannot promise that she will never hear another cruel joke whispered when she walks into a room on my arm. I cannot promise a life free of effort, but I can promise this. I will never treat her as a prize I have won. I will never use her as a shield for my own vanity. I will honor her as my equal, listen when she speaks, and stand between her and any storm I am able to lessen. If you consent, I will ask for her hand not as a solution to a problem, but as the greatest joy of my life. The room fell quiet. Monsieur Moreau looked at his daughter. "Elise," he asked, "you have heard him. Is this what you desire?" "Yes, Papa," she said. Her voice did not waver. "I desire him. Not only for now when everything feels dramatic and bright, but for the days when nothing happens at all. I want to sit across from him at breakfast and know that the man I see is the same one I see now. I want to build something with him, not just wear his name." He rubbed his forehead. "You make an old man feel very young, and very old at once," he murmured. He turned back to Henri. "I cannot offer a rich dowry," he said. "You know that already. If you wanted a marriage of fortune, you would be elsewhere. But I can offer you a daughter who will not abandon you when the world is loud or silent. If she has chosen you, I will not stand in the way." Henri's throat tightened. "You give your consent?" he asked. Monsieur Moreau nodded once, firmly. "Yes," he said, "on one condition." Henri tensed. "Name it." "That you do not shut her out when you feel ashamed or afraid," he said. "My greatest fear for her has never been poverty. It has been loneliness in company. Do not make her knock on a door that belongs to both of you." Henri swallowed hard. "I will not," he said hoarsely. "I cannot promise I will never be afraid, but I promise I will speak that fear aloud, instead of locking it away." Monsieur Moreau rose and held out his hand. "Then, Comte d'Amblin," he said, "you have my blessing to ask my daughter." Henri stood as well. He took the older man's hand, shocked by how much that simple contact meant. "Thank you," he said. "You will never regret it." "We shall see," Monsieur Moreau said with a faint smile. "Now go before she suspects I meant all those flattering words only for your ears." He stepped aside. Henri turned to Elise. She had risen too. She stood there, lovely and steady, the person who had taken his life and quietly turned it in a new direction. "Elise Moreau," he said, "you already know what is in my heart. But I must still ask. Will you marry me?" She did not hesitate. "Yes," she said. "I will marry you. Freely, gladly, entirely awake." He exhaled, almost a laugh, almost a sob. He took her hands very carefully in his. "You have made me the happiest man in Paris," he whispered. "I thought you did not care about Paris," she said. "I do not," he answered. "But you live in it. So for tonight it matters." Their hands tightened together. The engagement, once agreed in that quiet study, could not remain private for long. Within days, the announcement appeared in the newspapers. Names and titles, carefully printed. No explanations, no apologies. Paris reacted in predictable ways. "How romantic," some said, genuinely pleased. "The Count has found someone who sees his heart." "How shocking," others said, dismayed. "She might have had anyone." "How instructive," a few murmured. Perhaps we should not have laughed so freely. At tea tables and card games, people weighed the match like a coin on their tongues. "He is not handsome," one lady declared. "He is very kind," another replied. "My cousin's maid says he tips the staff more than any man she knows." "What does kindness matter when one must present one's husband to the world?" a third asked. "It matters when one must live with him afterwards," the second answered. At his club, Marcel slapped Henri on the back so hard he nearly choked on his drink. "You did it," Marcel crowed. "You impossible, stubborn, terrified man. You did it." "More accurately," Henri said, "she did it." "I simply followed." "Nonsense," Marcel said. "You stood up in a crowded room and spoke from your heart. Half the men here cannot speak from their hearts even to their dogs." Henri laughed. "Do you think they will ever stop talking?" he asked. "Oh no," Marcel said cheerfully. "They will talk until they run out of air. Let them. You will be too busy to listen." Antoine Delacroix heard the news from a fellow diner in a fashionable restaurant. "So it is official," the man said. "She is to marry him. I suppose miracles do happen." Antoine sipped his wine. "Miracle is an odd word for it," he said. "Some might call it stubbornness." "And you?" the man asked. "What do you call it?" "A closed door," Antoine said. "And I have no interest in knocking on doors that will not open." He did not attend the wedding. In the months that followed, he was seen less often in certain drawing rooms and more often in others, where new opportunities waited. If he felt any regret, he did not show it. If he thought of the girl who had refused his bargain, he did so in private. Spring came, softening the edges of the city. The church chosen for the ceremony was not the largest in Paris, nor the most fashionable, but it held memories for the Moreau family. Light filtered through clear glass rather than stained windows, resting on polished wooden pews and simple flowers arranged with care. On the morning of the wedding, Henri stood in a small side chamber with Marcel, his cravat feeling tighter than any he had ever worn. "I cannot breathe," he muttered. "You are breathing," Marcel said. "Too quickly. Slow down." "If I faint at the altar," Henri said, "you will never let me forget it." "If you faint at the altar," Marcel replied, "I will drag you upright for the vows and tease you for the rest of your life. That is what cousins are for." Henri tried to smile. His hands were cold despite the warmth of the room. "Do you think she will regret this?" he asked quietly. "Not now, but later, when the novelty wears off and all that is left is me." Marcel's face softened. "Henri," he said, "she knows you better than anyone. She has seen you humiliated and brave, doubtful and honest. She chose you with all that knowledge. If she regrets anything, it will not be you. It will be the number of times you ask this question." Henri exhaled slowly. "Very well," he said. "I will try to stop." "Good," Marcel said. "Now stand up straight. You are about to marry the most admired woman in Paris. At least look as if you believe you deserve it." The doors at the back of the church creaked open. The guests rose. Henri turned. Elise walked up the aisle on her father's arm. Her gown was not the most extravagant that season. They could not afford it, and she would not have wanted it. But it was beautiful in its simplicity, and she wore it with such calm joy that no one could have improved upon it. Henri's breath caught. He had seen her in ball gowns and day dresses, in laughter and in indignation. He had never seen her like this, serene, eyes shining, moving toward him as if every step was a promise. As she drew close, he saw that she was not entirely serene after all. Her hand trembled slightly on her father's arm, her lips parted on a breath that matched his. Her father placed her hand in Henri's. "Take good care of her," he whispered. "I will," Henri said. "With my life," the priest spoke. Vows were recited. The words were familiar to everyone present, but for Henri and Elise, each phrase felt newly minted. "Have and hold," Henri said, his voice low but steady. "For richer, for poorer," she said, without flinching. "In sickness and in health," they both repeated, understanding that sickness did not only mean fevers and aches, but also the quiet pains of the heart. When it was done, when the blessing was pronounced and the new couple turned to face the congregation, a murmur of genuine warmth ran through the church. Some faces still held surprise, but there was more acceptance than anyone had expected. Outside, petals were thrown. Laughter rose. Marcel cheered loudest of all. "Comtesse d'Amblin," he cried, bowing extravagantly before Elise. "My cousin has never looked so impressive as he does on your arm." "Then I shall keep him there," she said, laughing. Henri leaned close to her ear. "Are you happy?" he asked. "Yes," she said simply. "More than I imagined I could be." They rode away in a modest carriage, not a gilded one, but to Henri it felt like the most splendid in the world. In the months that followed, their life took shape slowly. They settled in the Damblin house. Elise walked through its rooms, asked questions of the staff, listened more than she spoke at first. She learned the names of the maids and footmen, the cook, the coachman. She asked about their families, their worries, their joys. The servants, who had long respected Henri for his fairness, quickly came to love their new mistress for her attention. At breakfast, they sat across from each other with coffee and bread and letters. "Another note from your aunt," Henri said one morning, tapping a sealed envelope. "She writes as if I moved to another country," Elise said, "when we live 20 minutes apart." "Does she approve of your new address?" he asked. "She approves of being able to say, 'My niece, the Comtesse,'" she replied. "Beyond that, she is adjusting." "And your father?" he asked. "He pretends to worry about us," she said. "Then he accepts your help in arranging his accounts and sleeps better at night. He is adjusting too." Henri spread jam on his bread with care. "I do not wish him to feel beholden," he said. "I offer advice because I happen to understand certain matters." "He knows," she said. "He is proud enough to resist and wise enough to accept. It is a good combination." Sometimes, on quiet evenings, doubts visited Henri still. He would catch sight of himself in a mirror and pause, his reflection filling more of the frame than he wished. He would remember the cruel words he had overheard and feel them prick anew. One such evening, he stood in his dressing room, staring at his waistcoat. It had been taken out again. His shoulders drooped. Elise appeared in the doorway. "Are you fighting with your buttons?" she asked. "They are winning," he replied. She stepped inside and closed the door gently. "Turn around," she said. He obeyed. She fastened the buttons with quick, nimble fingers. When she finished, she did not step back. She rested her hands lightly on his chest and looked up at him. "Do you know what I see when I look at you?" she asked. "Too much cloth," he said. She shook her head. "I see the man who helped a trembling servant without expecting thanks," she said. "I see the man who faced a room full of cruel eyes and spoke gently anyway. I see the man who chose to risk humiliation rather than let others decide his life for him." Her hands slid up to his shoulders. "I see my husband," she said. "The one I chose. The one I would choose again in any shape." His throat tightened. He leaned down and pressed his forehead to hers. "You make it easier," he murmured. "What?" she asked. "To believe that I am more than what they say," he said. "That is because you are," she replied. "I simply refuse to let you forget it." They attended another ball that winter as husband and wife. Whispers followed them, as they always would. But the tone had changed. Where once there had been unrestrained mockery, now there was more caution. "Look at them," one lady remarked. "They seem content." "Content?" another replied. "They seem happy." "Perhaps she simply pretends," the first suggested. "If she is pretending," a gentleman said dryly, "she deserves an award. I have never seen such a consistent performance." Some younger women watched Elise with a different sort of interest. "She could have had Delacroix," one murmured. "Instead, she chose him. She chose a man who listens," another said. "There is something to be said for that." On the dance floor, Henri and Elise moved together with a familiarity that made the steps smoother. He no longer counted every motion in his head. He focused on her, on the way her eyes brightened when he said something that amused her, on the warmth of her hand in his. "Do you remember our first dance?" she asked. "How could I forget?" he said. "I thought I would pass out." "You did not," she replied. "You stood. You danced. You began everything." "I still say you began it," he answered. "You were the one who crossed the room." "We met in the middle," she said. "That seems fair." They laughed, turning in time with the music. Later that evening, a young girl of 17 approached Elise in the retiring room. She was pale, her hands twisting in her skirts. "Mademoiselle—" "Madame," she corrected quickly. "May I ask you something?" "Of course," Elise said. "What is it?" The girl hesitated, then blurted, "How did you bear it? When people spoke of you and the Count, when they laughed?" Elise considered her. "Sometimes I did not bear it," she said. "Sometimes I went home and cried. Sometimes I wanted to shout. Sometimes I wanted to disappear." The girl looked startled. "But you did not," she said. "No," Elise answered, "because when I stood beside him I felt that I was standing beside the truth. And I have learned that truth is worth more than approval. Approval can vanish in a day. Truth remains even when no one looks at it." The girl nodded slowly. "And he?" she asked. "How does he bear it?" "He has had more practice," Elise said. "But he also has something he did not have before." "What?" the girl asked. "A hand to hold when the room feels too bright," she replied. "That makes a great difference." The girl looked down at her own empty hands. "Thank you, madame," she whispered. "Do not thank me," Elise said. "Just remember that what they say is less important than what you decide to believe." As the months turned into a year, small changes took root. One of the ladies who had once laughed the loudest at Henri's expense came to call on Elise. She sat nervously in the salon, her fan twisting in her fingers. "I owe you an apology," she said. "I have been unkind. I repeated things I should not have. It was easy at the time. You made me feel ashamed of that ease. I hope," Elise said gently, "that I made you feel capable of more than that." The lady dabbed at her eyes. "You did," she said. "I am trying to be better. It is new. Most good things are," Elise replied. Henri heard of this later and shook his head in wonder. "You seem to be starting a quiet revolution," he said. "One apology at a time. I doubt Paris will change that quickly," she said. "But if a few tongues grow kinder, I will not object." One evening, after a long day of visits and estate matters, Henri and Elise sat together by the window of their sitting room. Outside, the city hummed softly. Inside, the fire burned low. Henri rested with his arm along the back of the sofa. Elise leaned against him, her head on his shoulder, her hand tucked into his. "Do you ever wish we had done it differently?" he asked suddenly. "That we had chosen a quieter path? A less noticed one?" She tilted her head to look up at him. "Do you?" she asked. He thought for a moment. "No," he said. "I wish that some things had hurt less. I wish that certain words had never been spoken. But if we had hidden, if we had bowed to what they expected, I would not be here with you now. I would be somewhere else, living a life that suited their eyes and not my heart. That seems a poor trade." She smiled. "Then my answer is the same," she said. "I do not regret the noise. It only made our silence together feel sweeter." He brought her hand to his lips and kissed it. "There is something I think about often," he said quietly. "That first night when I was about to leave. If you had not called my name, I would have gone home alone. Perhaps I would never have returned to such gatherings. Perhaps we would have remained strangers forever. I could not bear to watch you walk out like that," she said. "It felt wrong, as if the story was ending before it began." "So you changed it," he said. "So we changed it," she corrected. "Together." They sat in comfortable quiet for a while, listening to the muted sounds of Paris. Finally, she spoke again. "Do you know what I wish?" she asked. "What?" he replied. "I wish that somewhere there is a man standing at the edge of a room, believing he is unworthy of being seen, and that somewhere there is a woman watching him and thinking, 'They are wrong,'" she said, "and that she will find the courage to cross the floor." He nodded slowly. "And I hope," he said, "that when she does, he will find the courage to take her hand." She smiled and nestled closer, his arm tightening around her as if he would never let go. In that small room, far from chandeliers and whispers, their hearts rested in a peace they had both once believed was meant only for other people. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.